Hey everyone, this is the Halifax Real Estate Podcast. My name is Jason Paul and I'm a licensed realtor at Keller Williams Select Realty in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I'm here to help you gain a better understanding of real estate in Halifax and introduce you to a wide variety of people that work in or with our industry as well. After AIR BNBing a spare bedroom in July 2017, Avery Birch has grown his portfolio in business to include 55 operating AIR BNBs throughout HRM. Founding 365 Experience Inc., and now the acting CEO, Avery and his company provide exceptional vacation homes for short to medium-term accommodations, with their mission and value focused exclusively on their customers' needs. Please welcome Avery Birch. Hey Avery, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a pleasure.
Very excited.
So the reason why I wanted to get you on and why I've been hounding you for a month now is because I thought that Airbnb is such a great topic that not a lot of people know about particularly me. It's a topic that I'm very interested in. And when I heard your success in the business, I thought you'd be the perfect guest to have. So I guess my first question is, how did you get into Airbnb?
What part of the story do you want?
The beginning.
I had been running a business prior and looking for something new. A friend of mine mentioned that a great way to earn some extra income would be throwing my extra bedroom online on Airbnb, and I did it. Turns out it was really good, and the revenue from that one room paid for the apartment. So then I looked online to find some data on what the market would do, and actually found it quite easily, and then proceeded to getting our first unit, standalone rental. And the very first unit, I was just sharing a story with a friend a moment ago. We furnished it with nothing by driving a trolley around on student throw-out day and taking all the furniture. And we put it into this apartment and furnished it for 2 bedrooms for $600. And I thought it was great. And we were very excited about it. It was like, wow, we did this. This is going to work. Looking back on it, it was terrible. Like, we had sawed some box springs in half to get them in the door. Like, the table was like Japanese style. The legs had been sawn off, so they were also like kneeling on the floor. 3 different couches, half ripped. It was bad, but it worked.
It worked.
And we were instantly booked, and we just stayed booked. And that to us said, okay, if this works, then anything can work.
we have a prototype. We can make it better.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where was the first unit?
It was on in the center of town on Hunter Street by Long and McQuaid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right by the Halifax Commons. So it's sort of in the thick of it all.
Yeah, and you rented out for $600 a month or $600 a night?
Oh, geez. No, that was how much we spent on the furniture.
Oh, okay.
Our rent was $1,200, and the daily charge came out around $80.
Okay. And did you find it was fully booked for the time being?
Yeah.
All year round?
Not all year round. You've got seasonality. So in the summer months, which we accidentally launched in, was why we were fully booked. And once we hit the winter and people stopped coming, it was because we realized, okay, this isn't very good. So in the summer, anything sells. In the winter, you have to be a bit better.
Okay.
So that's where we started to tighten up on our operations.
Okay. So after you realized the first one is really successful, that first 2-bedroom, and how did you grow? Where did you go to the next one?
We jumped a bit all over the place. We had a location out towards the Rotary in Halifax. For anybody not in Halifax, let's say 10 to 15 minutes out of the downtown core. And it did all right. Yeah. And then we jumped to another spot in the downtown core in a rougher part of town. And that did pretty good. We started realizing that we really had to stick in the thick of it in downtown. Yeah. Now that's changed a little bit during COVID, where people are appreciating cottages more. It's hard to know if that will stay, but ultimately it comes down to how well you furnish the place. And now we have places in Bedford and cottagey areas. We've got places everywhere, and even Dartmouth and Highfield Park, and they all work. Okay. It's just about how nicely you set them up. Yeah. How well you represent them.
How many Airbnbs are you currently managing right now?
55.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That must be okay. managing 55 Airbnbs right now, how are you managing those individually or as a whole? Like, how does your operations look to cover all those different units?
So we have a full team, and it mixes for us based on how we set up our agreements. Half of our relationships are fixed leases where we're going to pay a flat amount every month for the space, whether it's commercial or residential. We find a way to work. And depending upon the area where it is in town, we'll focus on tenants that might be 30 days plus, or if it's downtown in a commercial space, you might be tenants that are 2 days minimum. It just depends upon regulations.
Okay.
And then on the second side, we have profit shares where we actually work with landlords to manage the whole operation. They just collect a check at the end of the month, and our profit share typically comes around 75-25.
Okay.
And in that relationship, they are responsible for paying for the furniture.
Oh,
so mixed bag of how we want to get into it. It just depends on the comfort level of each partner landlord that we work with.
Yeah.
And then it comes down to our operations team where we have management, cleaning at every level, and it just sort of runs itself. Everyone's got their job.
Oh, that's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah.
For these 55 units, are they all leases or do you own any of them?
We actually don't own any of the buildings.
Okay.
Can't wait to start owning some of the buildings, but we've grown very quickly, and furniture is very expensive. So it's been cash flowing all the way into the next property. So we only hold the leases or hold the agreements with the landlords.
Okay. Now, when you move, so you don't own any of the buildings, but you have but you're leasing a lot of spaces out. What's your cash flow look like on a typical Airbnb? Let's just say downtown Halifax. How much revenue are you going to bring in during the summertime? If you have something like Hunter Street, for example.
So it totally fluctuates. The easy metric that we try to run with in the downtown is an average property is going to net 30,000 revenue over a year. You're going to see the biggest peak in August and the slowest trench in February.
Yep.
For a 1-bedroom in the downtown in August, you'll probably hit 3,500, and in February you'll probably hit 13 to 15.
Okay. So
this year is completely out to whack, and our winter is completely booked because of isolations.
Oh, that's not bad though.
It's so cool. Couldn't have expected that. And yeah, so it's quite a big swing. You have to really watch your staffing carefully.
Yeah.
Otherwise it'll come up to bite you.
Okay. Now with short-term rentals, so let's say you have a couple coming in who have booked it for 3 nights, and then you have another couple coming in for 1 night. For the operation side of it, this is the part that really intrigues me. How do you work with the cleaners to get it reset for the next couple? Because you might only have an evening or a 12-hour turnover for the next people are in. So how do you get them in there and get it so clean so quickly for a turnover?
So that's actually not that crazy. It didn't take long to figure it out, but it took a while to perfect it. And I think anybody else who runs an Airbnb would really agree with that sentiment. We're still perfecting it. It's not perfect. But the standard, even if you have someone that's back to back, checking out Monday, checking in Monday, you've got a 4-hour window.
Okay.
So we would run checkouts has to be by noon, and check-ins have to be no earlier than 4.
Okay.
So bare minimum, that gives us 4 hours, and that's plenty of time.
Yeah.
Done. And in terms of managing all the ins and outs across 55 properties, we've done a few things. One of them being we don't allow 1-night stays. Our pricing is actually set up very creatively where if you're booking within 6 days, you can get a 2-night stay. If you're within 7 to 25 days, it's a 3-night minimum, or 4-night if it touches a weekend. And if you're 25 days to 45, it's a 7-night minimum. And if you're 45 day plus, it's 14-day minimum. So this allows us to keep our calendar super full with the most valuable reservations, and anything that's left towards the last minute, we have 2-night stays. So we can see everything coming up, and it's very easy to plan.
Yeah.
And we also have a cleaning staff that of 3 people now. So it all sort of seems to flow. And if there are any bottlenecks, we'll just block one night to make sure it
Okay.
doesn't sell, and then we'll catch up on one the next day.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, we always seem to make it work.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to actually getting the Airbnb booked, obviously there's the Airbnb website and stuff like that. But do you find staging and presenting the Airbnb plays a significant role in making sure that it's booked, or would it just be location?
Oh, it's with great staging, you can make any location work.
Okay.
Demand is still going to fluctuate if people want to be in that general area, but that's really what we found this year was taking some underperforming areas and making them look really, really nice. Surprisingly, would encourage business in the door.
Okay.
But location does sell ultimately. So if you have a really bad, really poor looking units in poor shape right downtown, it will sell.
Yeah.
In the summer, it'll always be full. In the winter, you'll be half full.
Okay.
But if you've got a top-notch property in the downtown, all of a sudden your price can go very high.
Yeah.
Because people are willing to pay for it.
Would
In
you-
the winter, you stay full.
Okay, so I'm going to stick with this though because I'm intrigued by this part. Is that so with the location, and say we're downtown Halifax, just prime location, great area. The price points you see fluctuate on Airbnb. You've seen some of it's $400 a night, $300 a night, $200 a night. If you're trying to maximize your net for the summer, staging obviously plays a significant role in capturing that $400 price point. Does it not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are the subtle differences between a $400 unit to you and a $200 unit in South and just say downtown Halifax?
Oh, that's actually a fun question. I've typically noticed that that big price difference is about one rug and a couple pieces of art away.
What?
Yeah, that's it. Most places don't have a rug on the living room floor, and it's shocking how much of a difference that does to tie the space together. And a couple pieces of wall art, it's bizarre. Like literally add a rug, add one big bold piece of artwork on the wall, and you're in business. It's expensive to get those two things, but they make a massive difference in your booking. Like you can have a bed, you can have a couch, you can have a coffee table. Like these are all great. But if you don't have a rug to tie the living room together, and if you don't have a big statement piece on the wall, you're just not going to get the difference. Like those two things would probably up your price $50 a night.
No way.
It's crazy.
Just like those subtle differences.
Yeah, and that's where we started. We never knew. And then towards the part we're at now, it's you add them and all of a sudden they photograph way better, which brings in the bookings. People say, wow, what a beautiful space. More 5-star reviews, a rug and a statement piece. That's it.
It's really intriguing to hear because like we see the same thing in real estate in terms of like when you have a place going to the market that we want to sell that isn't staged versus the difference of bringing in a stager to come in and add the little subtle touches like you say, a nice rug to ground the space, a coffee table with a plant and a few magazines, and the way the furniture is presented around the space to ground it and make it inviting. Well, the differences in price point of what's selling. It'd be
crazy.
Difference between list price and 10 grand, 15 grand over. Now in this market, the market being the way it is, you can still get 10 to 15 grand over if you've got location, but still the impact is huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
Which is why I want to get into it with you, because it's just want to make sure that it's still relevant even in that market. Moving on now, cottages. You say you're coming up really big right now with the isolation.
Yeah, it's weird. People are more interested in places that are not in the direct city. So, for instance, outside of the city. If you're going to be stuck indoors for 14 days, you might want to have a bit more privacy so you could hang around your lot versus living in an apartment building where you can't actually hang around anywhere. So cottages have been having a massive uptick because they're quite unique and you have room to move around. And we only have one of them actually that fits that bill, and it's just booked solid.
When you say something's booked solid, well, how long of a timeline are we looking at?
Oh, geez, I don't know. That's a good question. At least 2 months in advance.
At least 2. Okay, so that's when you have an Airbnb that's 2 months out in advance. That you consider that book solid.
Oh, yeah, I'd be thrilled.
Okay,
We typically specialize on stuff only being within 30 days booked.
Okay.
But we've recently switched up a little bit, and now we're starting to get bookings all the way out 4 or 5 months in advance.
You have some bookings 4 or 5 months out in advance right now.
Yeah, it's something new we're trying. We're trying to see what value people are willing to pay that far in advance. It is a bit of a discount, but it's more certainty. And when you have enough scale, you could do for a little certainty.
Yeah, of course. That makes sense when you get the business big enough.
Yeah.
How was COVID in March for you and your business?
That was terrible. That was just absolutely terrible. I was in the US at the time, and just gut wrenching to seeing cancellation over cancel. Like the whole floor fell out. And we had expanded March 1st 10 properties and leveraged another debt play that was going to pay off by May, and couldn't pay for any of it. So we had to renegotiate all of our terms, and only got that debt that was supposed to be done in May finished by end of September, only just in time for the winter to come up. So now we're not going to get our revenue, and it's just, we're still feeling it.
You're still feeling it.
Still feeling it. Yeah. Winter's extremely strong right now, so that's really helped us balance again.
Yeah.
If it wasn't, then we would be in very rough shape. But April, the whole floor fell out. And then we just started redeveloping our strategy to keep things in track.
Yeah.
So we had to renegotiate everything we had. And it worked.
So let's just, when you say you had to renegotiate everything you have, going into April, how many Airbnbs did you have to renegotiate terms on for the leases?
Oh, geez, I think we were at least 40 then.
So you had to call 40 different unit owners, landlords, buildings, and renegotiate terms?
Yeah, the biggest thing that helped us was the craziest piece of information I never thought would have actually done something, but a mentor suggested it, and it changed everything. We'd have to pay all of our leases at the first of the month, and that's effectively cash flowing the operation. You pay for the start, and then you make your money as you go through the month. As the next month comes up, you pay for the start, and you make your money as you go. So you sort of have to have that float.
Yeah.
And when our float got evaporated, we had to go to each landlord and say, I'm asking for permission, but I hope you say yes, because I'm sort of just need to do it anyways. So hope you say yes. Otherwise I'm going to do it. We broke our leases into quarters, and we pay 1 quarter every week. Simple.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
So if you have $1,000, it's $250 a week until it's completed.
And that was manageable.
Yeah. And we just kept running it because the new bookings would come in, which would pay for that. And slowly we've been able to get back to the first of the month at about 75% of the properties now.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's not out of the woods yet, but thanks.
No, you're close. You're close though, which, I mean, if given Airbnb fell through, like you said, the floor came out. I remember reading articles in Airbnb and the struggles they were having in, America and Canada with the cancellations and stuff. Yeah. I guess the self-isolation that we have going on in the province of Nova Scotia has been a big benefit because people have to do that.
It's been huge, and especially of how Nova Scotia has handled the pandemic has really given people confidence to come travel here.
Yes.
Spend their time here, because there's a bit more freedom than other places in the country or in the US. And we've been having customers come from all around the world to just come spend 2 weeks, a month, 2 months here. And that's been driving up traffic. And in April, people would have had to pull out of the industry because they would need to pay their bills. So since we've been able to hold on, supply is down, demand is up. And that's why this winter is like the summer. You're
seeing a huge upside now because you managed to survive what would have been the bear market.
Exactly.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Are all your Airbnbs in Nova Scotia, or are they in like a PEI or like a Cape Breton as well?
We had just jumped into Montreal March 1st. Suffice to say, Montreal has failed. And we are pulling out of Montreal. Yeah, that hurt.
I'm so sorry to laugh. But...
Yeah, no, it was bad. We picked 2 beautiful downtown luxury properties. And this was us jumping into the big boys league. And they cost $3,000, would have done 10 in a month. So extremely profitable. Got an amazing deal, and the company took us in on a trust factor, and we just completely destroyed that. So have to just pull out and try again in a year.
Oh man.
Timing couldn't have been worse.
No, of course. I feel like COVID was a bad time for a lot of people.
Yep.
That intrigues me because when you are going into a new space, how do you look at, let's say you're looking at a potential area, a new Airbnb in a potential market. What kind of statistics do you need to tell you if it's going to be profitable or not?
So there's a website called AirDNA. You just Google that and it comes up, and that gives you everything you need to know.
Oh, okay.
Plug in the address and it tells you what you expect to earn and the seasonality of it. And then from that, you just get to work. It's simple.
You have so there's no spreadsheet. You just have this one website as a resource to qualify all your data on whether or not this Airbnb will work.
Yeah, exactly.
That's incredible. I didn't know that existed.
Yeah, that was the first thing that gave me confidence to jump into it, was seeing that there was data behind what worked and what didn't. And more specifically, as we've come to learn, we've really found a margin that we like to defend.
Yep.
And if we can't see something hit 40% or at least 38%, then we're not going to touch it.
38% net or gross?
Geez, I don't know which one's which. I never did.
Net gross is all
the one that comes first.
Gross.
The one that comes first. 40%.
net is what you made after expenses are taken out.
Okay, the gross.
gross it is. 30% gross then? 40% gross. Yeah. So you don't even look at the Airbnb, you don't consider moving on the Airbnb unless you make 40% year over year.
Yeah, so we have to see like what can we do to that property to hit that mark. And if it's underperforming, it's quite easy because we could give it a nice paint job and a furnishing and no problem. You take a bad area and you make it into a gem. It's actually the most profitable properties are the ones that are a bit beat up.
Okay.
The ones that are all done up really nice with never any issues downtown, your margin's thinner because they're so perfect.
Yeah.
So our best performing properties are in non-ideal locations, which is fascinating.
So in a non-ideal location in Halifax, what are you talking about?
We've got a couple in Dartmouth that are just in odd spots. We've got some in the north end of Halifax that are sleepier communities, but we do medium-term leases, and a couple in Fairview and Clayton Park. And a lot of our staple items are right in the downtown because that's where people are traveling, but the margin's thinner.
Okay.
So
when you talk about a medium-term lease, what's your definition of a short-term lease, a medium, and a long-term?
So that's actually a fascinating one. Short-term rental is anything under 30 days.
Okay.
And that is what all the regulations and rules coming out across the world impact. So if you're over 30 days, then these rules don't apply to you and you're under a Standard Tenancies Act. So anything over 30 days on a normal lease is considered a sublet. So that's where we've really started to specialize, is focusing on people that might come in for a month,
a
month and a half, 2 months, 3 months. Those are medium term. Long term is once we hit 12 months.
Yes. Okay.
So a long-term lease would be a year.
Yep.
Medium term is anything between 30 days and a year.
Okay. Do you have any current long-term leases going on in any of your Airbnbs?
Yeah. I guess you wouldn't consider them Airbnbs anymore.
No. But in some of your rentals, you do have long-term.
And we've picked those areas in community neighborhoods that are not in the downtown. We just are very cognizant of our neighbors. Yeah. We don't want heavy traffic in nice, calm communities. So we have those as long-term, and out and shoulder areas, we do medium, and then downtown we do short.
Okay, well, it makes sense.
Yeah, it fits the market.
Yeah, it's particularly with if you have a I can understand if you have an Airbnb out in a community with neighbors you have to be mindful of. You're much less it's much more secure to do a long term and guarantee your income month over month.
Exactly.
Rather than try and do the Airbnb short term rental 30-day cycles, because in your dead seasons you're not going to have any capital coming in.
Right, and it also annoys your neighbors.
You mentioned on the upcoming regulations with Airbnb. You hear a lot of chatter going on. I've kept my eye on what Toronto's doing. How do you feel what are those regulations you see coming in the future for Airbnb in Halifax?
I think it's just going to come down to where you're positioned. Like sort of the same thing that we've already been preparing for is don't do it in neighborhoods where families live. Okay. Do it in areas that are downtown and commercially zoned. Like I'm fine with that. That's no problem. And that's what we already do.
Okay.
I can't actually speak too much to that because I've sort of adapt with what comes.
Yeah.
We're just trying to be proactive with what we've seen. So just simple, stay out of residential areas unless you're going to do 30 days plus.
Okay.
And that's another one too. Like, I'm not too concerned with whatever comes because we've really adapted our business to focus on people that might be more executive stay. So we get quite a reasonable chunk that are 30 days plus, and it doesn't even matter. And anything that we do short is commercially zoned, so it doesn't matter either.
When you say commercially zoned, where are these buildings exactly?
Quinpool,
Okay.
Spring Garden.
Yeah, where there are
Barrington.
no neighbors and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Are you apartment buildings or condos?
Apartments.
How are you finding when you go to a apartment building, not a condo building, but when you go to an apartment building and say, listen, I want to rent this room out, do you tell them up front what you plan on doing with it?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay.
That's the only way we can reliably run this business.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're very explicit as to how we conduct ourselves and what to expect, what not to expect, but we position ourselves to be the ideal tenant. The building owners never hear from us, and if they do, it's very minor, and we typically take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
Also have our own maintenance team, so if anything, we're quite an asset to a building.
You have your own maintenance team.
Yeah, it's small, but there's never really anything big you need.
Yeah.
Anything within the walls, that's us, and anything that's the structure of the building or
That's the building.
air conditioning or appliances, like that's the people who own it.
Yeah.
So if it's minor repairs, we just deal with it. It's easier that way.
What's your typical minor repair on an Airbnb?
A door that's sticking, a bump on a wall, we'll patch and repair it.
So really minimal
Smoke
things.
detector. Yeah, like small things.
Yeah.
The finicky things that are just a waste of time for most landlords, that's what we touch. And then the things like, hey, the roof is leaking. Okay, well, I can't. No, I don't own this. I'm not fixing that.
That makes sense. That's a great, you must keep your costs so low if you're not handling any major asset of it towards a unit or a building.
Yeah, well, it's all relative. Like if we owned the asset, there'd be other perks to take part in, but
Equity.
yeah, exactly.
Gains in the market.
I'd say it's relative. I wouldn't say our costs are low by any means. We have quite a lot of costs, but we don't have those. We don't have those costs.
Yeah. What are your typical costs with an Airbnb?
You've got the cost of the space,
Okay.
your internet, your power, and your water.
Okay.
Water's not normally included, actually. It's typically comes with the apartment. So internet, power, lease.
Most condominiums or apartment buildings, I learned this actually last week, typically include water because
that's why
they all go out by the same line.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not individual lines per unit, which is just a fun little thing I learned last week.
We have water at like one building because it's an independent house, and that's how the owner keeps his costs down. So
that makes sense.
Otherwise, we don't have water.
Now, for the future of your business going forward, are you looking to get into buying properties?
That's the goal this year.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was really this business might seem glorious and the margins might just seem ridiculous and it's all happy-go-lucky, but it's actually extremely challenging to control the costs and keep the bookings coming in. And we've accumulated quite the impressive amount of debt to get to this point. So I just don't see it as being sustainable. You can scale this, but ultimately you're buying couches and beds.
Yeah.
So unless you have a way to get those for free, you're spending $6,000 per unit you add to have assets that immediately depreciate to 1/10 of their value. So the only next growth that we want to do is specifically buying our own real estate to put our own spaces in. Now that we've hit a certain tipping point, we can do that.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be actively expanding outside of things that we don't own. And I think that's going to bode well, way better into the future.
Yeah. When you move, what kind of purchasing are you looking to do in the future? Like you already talked about not going into residentials, so it would be condominiums.
Actually, no, I don't want anything to do with condos.
Good.
Condos, you've got the condo corps.
Yes.
And it's just too finicky.
Yeah.
I don't need Big Brother watching us. We do quite a diligent job, and it's quite challenging when someone steps in and tells you how to do your work differently.
Yeah.
So specifically duplexes, triplexes, like this kind of stuff.
Okay.
And we'd position those more around long-term leases or into furnished medium term stays. That's sort
So
of our
you're
goal.
okay. So you're shifting your business more instead of like getting away from the short term.
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely. Like there's room. There's a lot of room for high quality stuff in the medium space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's your clientele for the medium? Like what kind of people are you getting into the units to be there for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months?
Businesses from out of town coming in to do work, so more of executive stays. And you have people that might be relocating to the city.
Yep.
Got people that are moving into the country. People in between homes that are renovating. Seems to fall into that bucket. Or you can even get students that are international. That's quite a significant chunk too. But those are our biggest groups, I'd say.
Okay. I get students would be a big market. I feel like students would be a big market for you because they only really need the apartment from, or the Airbnb from a September to a April. They don't need it the year round.
Yeah, the students aren't bad, but they're not, the prices that we have to market our goods at typically price them out.
Okay.
So it's actually, we don't get a lot of students. We will get international though.
Yeah.
Because ultimately they don't want to be investing into furniture at a place they don't live. So if they want to live comfortably for the 4 months that they're here, for an exchange, it's a perfect situation. So we market aggressively for that.
Okay.
But for students that might be Halifax natives, like it doesn't make sense financially. They would get their own apartment and get their own furniture.
Yeah. You touched on something a little back that I want to expand on. When you get an Airbnb, it costs you $6,000 to furnish it.
Yeah, it depends on the size of the unit. If you're a studio, you can do it for 4. 1 bedroom, 5 to 6, 2 bedrooms, 6 to 7, 3. You'll probably spend $8,000-$9,000 to do it right.
Okay.
It's quite expensive when you consider the lease might be $1,500, and then you're spending $6,000-$7,000 to get it started. Like it's really tough to cash flow.
Yeah.
Once it gets going, then it's fine. But a property will basically take you a year just to break even on it.
That's really interesting to know.
Yeah, so it looks glorious, but the cost, if you can get your furniture for free, then this is great. You do
Student pickup day, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. But otherwise, it's quite exhaustive to run it for a year, and then the next year have to make your money on it.
Yeah.
So our furniture is our asset, and it's a pretty funny asset. We got a warehouse full of it, and it's a quite entertaining warehouse. We're always cycling things in and out of. But when I see the warehouse full, it's like, okay, we don't have our assets working for us. And they're just couches and beds. It's sort of funny.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. How big is your warehouse?
2,500 square feet.
Oh, okay. That's a large warehouse
It's our office space too. It's warehouse office. It's where we get together and
plan logistics and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. When you are doing logistics, moving furniture in and out, how does a typical day look in that warehouse where you have, maybe you're furnishing a 2-bedroom and you have a bunch of furniture moving out, but then you have to take down, maybe bringing in more furniture from another Airbnb that you're renovating?
It's actually not crazy. We'll have a heads up of what units are going to be changing. So our design team sort of looks at what we want in the new space, what was coming from the old space, and then we just make it work.
Okay.
So if 90% is coming from the old space, it never needs to touch the warehouse. The warehouse is only when we don't know what to do with it yet. Or if we have a new space and know things we're deconstructing, then we'll just go first from the warehouse, take everything that we can, and then order stuff that we don't have.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So yeah, we had our warehouse gotten really full from April when we had to take down a couple of units, set up a couple of units, and we never seem to be able to shake it because we keep acquiring new stuff, but it's slowly dwindling.
Yeah.
And I think we're about 2 to 3 units away from having it empty, which would be glorious. I can't wait to have it empty.
But when you expand again, you have to bring in more.
Sure.
Yeah. I suppose that's the goal, though, is to exhaust your warehouse, but then fill it back up.
Yeah. You don't want to be seeing it sit there. And when things are sitting there for a couple of months, it's just like you're not doing something right.
Yeah.
So it's a good motivator because you can see it each day and you're like, oh, wow, this bed, they need to put that bed to work.
How do you find the Airbnbs? What tools do you use to find a location that suits you guys and your business model?
We use the normal means that anybody else would to search for apartments, Marketplace, Kijiji, and other things like that. But we haven't actually done that since the very beginning. Once we found a few partners that have significant holdings, we seem to get thrown deals at this point. So we don't search anymore. They just come to us.
Oh, congratulations. So you have, when you talk about people with significant holdings, you're talking about, maybe real estate investors with properties that they want leased out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we'll end up being a first consideration because of the ease of use with us.
Yeah.
They don't hear anything and their properties get really well taken care of. It's a pretty good deal.
So the value you're providing to real estate investors in general is we're going to handle because typically with real estate investing, you hear the biggest struggle usually with the tenants, usually in terms of qualifying the tenant, leasing the tenant, taking care of the tenant, but you take away all that struggle with them.
Yeah, and I guess anyone that wouldn't know us would still have the same considerations, like, is this person going to respect what we've got here? But after you get some reputation, like the beginning was very tough, but now that we have a reputation, it's very easy to point to any one of the 55 and say, there you go.
There's your referrals.
There it is. Like we're doing this. We've got a staff of like 9 people. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
So over time, it gets quite easy to do. And we also sign, we like signing longer term commitments. So we like to do a 2-year lease or 3 or 4 where possible.
Oh, okay. So you negotiate way longer terms than one would expect.
So we make a very compelling offer to say we're here for longer. We'll take better care of it. It's hands off for you. So we try to make it very compelling to get our spaces.
Now, when you're taking on a lease for 4 years, are you able to negotiate a better discount for yourself on the actual value of the apartment, or are you paying?
Yeah,
okay.
there's some negotiation there because we look at where it is now and where it can be over the next few years and lock that price in.
Okay.
Because when the prices change each year, it really messes with the margin.
Yeah.
So the whole goal there is to sort of secure a rate that we know will work and then run.
Yeah, because you guys have the cash flow as well.
Yeah, and every time we do it, it's taking a bit of a leap of faith that, hey, no pandemic's going to come through here. Yeah, but we still figured it out. So that's sort of our new thing is signing multi-year.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense when you have that kind of an asset and you're doing short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, or even long-term rentals. If your business model is a space, you need to secure the space for longer terms than one would normally expect.
And you remember, it takes a year to pay off your furniture. And when you have to go and move it and move out, that's time and from the team, so which costs money. So you secure that for at least 2 years means you're actually going to drive profit on that place.
Yeah.
That took us 2 years to figure out.
Oh,
yeah.
How many years have you been in business for?
I think we're just crossing 4.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And you've grown up to a team of 9.
Let's see, when did we start? I think it was 2017. July 1st, I think, is when we started. Canada Day. Yeah, celebrate. So maybe only 3 years then. 3.5.
3.5 years. Yeah. And how many people now do you employ?
9.
Congratulations. How many of those people are interior designers, are laborers? Like, are they all multifunctional employees, or?
Yeah, everyone seems to be multifunctional. The cleaning team is pretty strict that they manage the cleans and the quality.
Yeah.
Our management team got one city manager that runs all the day-to-day operations. And we have one person that seems to be very multifunctional, gauging on coordinating with the cleaning team, managing a bit more of the logistics behind day-to-day operations, and doing the interior design and photo taking and listing creation. So we've got one person of many hats, one person of management, a team of cleaning, accounting, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Do you handle just acquisition now? Or are you logistic over everything?
So on my side?
Yeah.
I'm actually just starting to edge away from acquisition, which is pretty cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'll still step in. Yeah, that's probably pretty much the only thing that I'll touch now is acquisition and financials. Okay. We're building other things on the side that are taking more of my focus, and we're just trying to rebuild our cash flow. So letting this ride, not taking a much of a cut, and just the team knows what they need to do. So
how are you rebuilding the cash flow after the pandemic?
Very carefully.
Is it just the short-term strategy you talked about, or $250 over every week until the end of the month, or are you guys having other business? Are you guys implementing other business models in place to help recreate the lost
to rebuild the cash flow? we've just really hunkered down on the costs versus revenues.
Yes.
And the biggest one that we're figuring out today is how do we need to cut back on our wages a little bit because we are overstaffed, and we need to cut back on our expenses because we're spending too much versus what we're making.
Yeah.
So how do you rebuild the cash flow? You have to start focusing on profit first and let that sit in the bank account, and it helps.
Yeah, of course.
There's been a couple of government programs that we've tapped into as well, but ultimately it was just a lot of restructuring from April, and we're just fixing it now.
I mean, 6 months later is not bad considering what was happening. Maybe 8 months now since we're in December, but it's not that's not as long as you would expect after the fallout from that Airbnb took back in April.
And we moved a lot of things around basically every month. I think the stage we're at now is like the cement.
Okay.
Just, we have all the pieces. Let's cement it into a place that works every month. So we're like 90% of the way there already.
Okay.
This is just the final cement to sort of lock everything in.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
What were you doing before this?
I ran a painting franchise with University Painters. Yeah, pretty good at it.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I guess would you call it the natural natural progression, or?
I would say so. Without that program and that company, I wouldn't have learned all the skills and sales and management and quoting, and that sort of got me in the space of working around properties.
Yeah.
So it was pretty easy to understand the pains and wins of working with them.
Yeah.
And this naturally trickled right into it. So that's also why we're able to have the maintenance team, because I bring a little bit of that background from contracting as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a nice transition, but I did that for all of university. So it was 5 years. 5 years of painting.
Oh, okay. So from what year did you start university?
2012.
Okay. So I literally from university, you got into university painting, and then at the end of that, you were done and you went straight into Airbnb and have grown this wonderful business.
Yeah.
Have you replaced that income, that university? You don't have to disclose how much the amount is.
Oh yeah, I have.
Yeah, you have in 3 years.
Well, we did that in, I'd say, a year and a half.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was a leap of faith that year and a half. It worked out. So I've definitely replaced the income for sure.
Yeah. What was, when you were first starting out Airbnb, so like let's go to 2017, let's say, between July 1st and December 31st of 2017, what were your hardest struggles in that timeline?
Which timeline?
Like when you first got going to start scaling and building the business, where do you find were your biggest hurdles to grow and scale at a large quantity over that time?
Biggest hurdles, really understanding the seasonality, I think, was the biggest challenge that we've had to face.
Okay.
It's easy that when you get cooking into the summer, May is a good month. June is a better month. July is awesome. August is just unfathomable. And when you just keep going on this trajectory, you think like every day gets a little better. It's addictive. And you're doing 4 months of every day getting a bit better. And then September comes, and September sets back to July revenues where you're like, yeah, okay, this is still quite good. October sets back to May revenues where you're like, yeah, this is not bad. Okay, well, it's getting smaller, but no problem. And then November comes, it just falls off a cliff. So it's almost like a mental gymnastics to condition yourself to say, okay, remember, you're not going to make the same amount you just did 2 months ago. You have to cut prices.
Yeah.
And the first couple of years, our winters were just brutal because I was overly optimistic of what the winter would generate.
Okay.
And we've fixed that now by having a mix of short, medium, long, and pricing in advance and discounts on monthly. There's so many factors that go into securing the winter. But in the beginning, that was the biggest hurdle because we'd be hurting so badly in the winter, just hemorrhaging cash flow. And once we figured it out, we're profiting in the winter now, which is really cool.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Weird to see going from broke in like December to finally being cash flow positive.
It's weird. Like, the whole pandemic, I actually went through all of Game of Thrones, and I was saying like the winter was coming. No, we were in the winter in the summer, and now that it's winter, it's summer again. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Everything's on its head this year.
Do you have any high expectations for this summer? Because the vaccine's coming out.
I think it's going to be incredible.
I don't know.
It's going to be so good.
Good.
I think if I just say this enough, it'll actually happen.
Just speak it into fruition.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they announced, only a few days ago that the vaccine starts being introduced to Nova Scotians on the 15th.
It's so cool.
Yeah. 150,000 doses by March. And that's only going to treat 75,000 people, but that's only with Pfizer. I know the Canadian government's still negotiating with 2 or 3 other COVID-19 providers. So that we could potentially have, a large significant number of the Nova Scotian population inoculated by May, June, July, which would just be so great for you and your business.
I think it's going to come in a few different waves. And one thing that I actually haven't heard a lot of people voice through the pandemic, this is just a short little tangent here, but
yeah,
I have never been more thankful to live in Atlantic, Canada, just based on how we responded to such a ridiculous crisis. And the rules are so simple. If we just isolate a little bit, wear a little bit of a mask, keep your group sizes small, we've been able to have privileges. Our business has been booming. And I haven't heard anyone on the business owner side say, hey, these things have helped us stay together. Where I've seen the rest of the country that maybe not have followed the regulations, which have suffered in terms of businesses. They've had more closures.
Yeah.
We've been open for months only to have a couple weeks before Christmas closed. Yeah, sure. So the waves I see coming is once our second wave sort of lifts in Nova Scotia, our bookings will come back. They sort of fell off from the second wave. People don't want to come where they're isolated. I get it.
Yep.
So we're going to continue to have those 2-week, 3-week, 4-week bookings.
Okay.
Once the bubble lifts, I'd say, to Ontario and Quebec, I foresee a massive resurgence of travel into the province just from the people that haven't wanted to 2-week isolate.
Yes.
And then when you get into the summer months, you're going to be having more international travelers from the States that want to come and experience the East Coast or anywhere in Canada for that matter. So it's going to come in different waves and it will win every step of the way.
Yeah.
Which I'm just so thankful for.
Considering how it was looking at one point.
We're very tapped into the different groups across the continent that run short-term rentals, and this seems to be the general trajectory as each step of the way travel stays strong.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I'll give you something I heard that I don't know if you got into this, just as something I've heard recently with commercial. I know a very good friends of mine are currently negotiating commercial rental lease for the restaurant, and they've inserted a pandemic clause. I don't know. Yeah, they've inserted a pandemic clause so that if their business has to close due to a pandemic, they will waive rent for X amount of days.
Oh, that's cool.
Just as a tidbit for you, when you go to negotiate new spaces in the future, maybe see if you can include that clause just to protect you and your business. I know that's being introduced now in Halifax.
That's hilarious. I love it.
Yeah, I know a few realtors who've actually put that into negotiations for new commercial lease spaces to say, listen, if there is a pandemic, we're not doing this. And 1 or 2 have actually accepted it.
I think I'll give it a go.
Yeah, just as something in the future for you.
That's perfect.
Yeah. Now back to the business discussion, because like I said, this model really intrigues me. If someone wants to get involved with Airbnb today, how do you think is the best way to get involved now with the business? Because it's obviously changed since you started. Because the short-term rentals, as you said earlier in the conversation, are going to be heavily regulated.
You still have an opportunity though. Like I would start the exact same way.
Okay.
Especially depending on where your background's coming from, it doesn't really matter. It's just the scale, your speed of scale, I think is what the difference would be depending upon how much capital or experience you bring to the game. But everyone should start with their spare bedroom. It helps you understand every step of the way. You have to know what it's like to clean. You have to know what it's like to host somebody, to see what they want. And you don't have to do it for long, a couple weeks, a month at most, and then take your jump on your first standalone. But if you don't understand that part of the customer journey, then you're going to have a lot of challenges that you never got to learn in the beginning. So I'd start the exact same way. It might be a little challenging with isolation rules just because you might not want someone isolating in your spare bedroom because that wouldn't work. So this time of year, it's probably not going to work out the same way. probably not a good year to start jumping into a short-term rental business until they have a vaccine out, to be honest. A lot of things to figure out, and navigating that when there's so much uncertainty, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I've been here and I have to deal with it. I don't have an option. So yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have chose to do this if I wasn't already here.
Yeah.
But once the pandemic is cleared up and we have a bit more freedom, then start with the spare bedroom.
Start with the spare bedroom.
Every time. Start with the spare bedroom. Go from there.
Okay. And when you start this bedroom, as we've gone over, please start in July or August.
Oh, if you're going to start in any month, start in February.
Really?
Start in February because you have the least amount of travel.
Okay.
It's going to take a little bit to get your bearings for what needs to go into the unit. Then you're going to need to get it listed. Realistically, you're not going to be rolling until about March 1st if you are, working diligently but making mistakes.
Yep.
By March 1st is when the market comes back, which means you can get your initial reviews. So by the time you hit summer, you're strongly reviewed, you know your pricing, and you can make it big. So March 1 is the best time to launch to get your fastest payback on your furniture. It brings down, if you launch your business in let's say July and August, you won't make your money back because it drops off a cliff until next July.
Yeah.
But if you start for March 1st, you can pay off that furniture by about September.
Oh,
so you can shorten your year to about 6-7 months.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd say start March 1st or February if you can afford to cash float a little bit.
Yeah. I guess my final question for you before we get out of here is just simply, where do you want the business to be in 5 years? Do you have a long-term trajectory where you want to go?
Yeah, it's a funny question. I don't know what exactly 5 years will bring, but we'll just keep.
Hopefully no more pandemics.
Yeah. Jeez, no. Just keep delicately leveraging our position with real estate to keep building a bigger asset pool. Personally, the thing that motivates me the most is a big driving why. And my ultimate goal is to use a real estate platform as the cash flow to create venture fund, where we invest in smart people to build smart things. And I keep saying this because eventually it's going to come through. But real estate is quite consistent. Short-term rentals, once set up, are quite consistent. So it creates a really good platform on which to bring people in and get them on different projects. And that's what we've started already doing at our company, is building other ventures just for fun.
Yeah.
And seeing what sticks. So 5 years from now, I would see other businesses that have outstripped the success of the initial one.
Yeah.
And we're already on that track. But 5 years from now, I'd love to be owning all of the places that we reside in, not just leasing.
Yeah.
So I think those are the two, is own where we live and have other businesses that outshine the first.
Avery, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, this has been fun. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, no worries. Come back in July when we'll see how you're doing in July when things are hopefully up and running again.
That's a good test. Let's do it.
Buddy. Thanks so much. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you want to get in touch with Avery, you can reach him at 902-266-8682 or avery.birch@gmail.com. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can reach me at 902-220-7357 or jason.paul@kw.com. Thanks again. Bye.